Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Game number 2 between Nerchio and Grubby. This time we are on Shakuris Plateau. Let's take a look at which version it is. No destructible rocks back here. I am ever saddened whenever I see this. That was probably one of my favorite things about this map was the back entrance into people's base. I've mentioned that before, but man, it's kind of frustrating that they get rid of that because that definitely made things a little more entertaining, if nothing else, having that continuous threat of a ground force breaking through your back door. I mean, obviously, anyone can always drop in the back of your base, but having that ground threat as well put that extra dynamic in. That was definitely very entertaining to commentate at the very least. Grubby moving out with that first pylon at his expo. Looks like we're going to be seeing a Forge Fast expand from Grubby. That's pretty much expected. He's going to be moving that probe right across the map right now, and he may actually end up going into Nerchio's base first thing. It doesn't look like he's cutting across. No, he's not. So he is, in fact, going to be scouting Nerchio right away. Now, Nerchio, of course, is going to be grabbing Grubby as well a little bit later, though, as that Overlord's going to take quite some time. Now, one good thing, though, for Nerchio is he's going to be able to get a full scout of everything Grubby's doing because Grubby will not have any anti-air in time, and that Overlord can pretty much sail his way right through his base and his expo before that first Stalker and or Sentry comes into play. Here comes that Grubby moving on through right now. Nerchio getting a full scout of Nerchio's base. That's what I meant to say. I, of course, fully expect Nerchio to just be going for a fast expo this game. We can't see that first drone actually was moved out for a scouting drone that wasn't intended to drop an expo. But no, actually, Nerchio going to be opening up with that one base starter. That is very interesting. Now, he is going to have an opportunity, I would think at least, to get some Zerglings into the base of Grubby. It's going to be a little tough, though. Will be tight because depending on if he goes gateway or cannon first, he could, of course, have that cannon up in time before any threat comes. But Nerchio scouting it right away. So now Nerchio is aware. I'm going to be very interested to see if he decides to try to push very strongly against this or not. Let's take a look over here. Back inside of his base. Pool just about finished. Going to start getting some Vespian gas right now as well. He's going to be trying to delay that expo and just kind of be a pain in the butt, a big nuisance here for as long as possible. He's just going to want to keep that drone around. And the one thing he, of course, does not want to do is lose the drone. So as long as that doesn't happen, he should be okay. Moving on through. There we go. Finally, Grubby able to drop that expo. Taking a look over here. Nerchio still on the one base. Very, very interesting here. So he is still, of course, not expanding. I wouldn't expect him with the one base play to expand until 21, but what I'm most interested in, rather, is to see when he gets there. But it looks like he's not, unfortunately, going to get there in time. Also looks like that drone was killed right there. We did see that carcass laying on the ground. So that first cannon coming on through, Grubby did decide to go for that cannon before the gateway, so that's going to be up there pretty much no problem before Nerchio ends up getting any lings across the board. It looks like he's, in fact, just going to be going with those typical 4 scouting lings, using them for scouting and trying to grab Xel'Naga towers and just maintain a little bit of early game map control. Taking a look back over here for Grubby, just going to be working on his econ right now, finally getting that first assimilator. Cannon is up, gateway coming through. Going to be seeing a Cybernex core placed likely right here as well as soon as that gateway does go ahead and finish. Looks like we're seeing Grubby move across the map. I would be interested to see if he tries to go drop a proxy pylon at any point soon. Right here is just a fantastic position, especially if your opponent doesn't scout that at all. Nerchio moving out right now with those Zerglings. Again, going to be used to grab Xel'Naga towers and going to be used to move up front and see precisely what Grubby has for a wall off. There's that probe chilling out right there in the corner. It looks like Nerchio is going to be sending the Overlord far to the right, using him for later in the game, hopefully, if it ends up going that far at least, using it for later in the game when a potential expansion of Grubby ends up being dropped in that position. So there we go, scouting Zerglings. Luckily, didn't die there, just took one shot from the cannon and then pulled on back. There's that Cybernex core as expected. Grubby, as expected, of course, working on his resources right now, trying to get up that strong economy. He's going to feel pretty safe for quite some time now, so he's not really all too concerned at all. Zealot finished right now, and wow, actually, Grubby did end up leaving a space here. A lot of times you'll see Protest players just go for that full wall off and then kill off a building, not having to get any early game units, and then just kill off a building later in the game. There's a proxy pylon right now from Grubby, pushed a little bit further back, hopefully to entail its hopefully to keep it a little bit safer, basically. And then also, of course, this is going to be used when Nerchio does move into a third. He's going to be able to just warp some Zealots in right there, and that'll be quite a pain in the butt for Nerchio, I would have to imagine. There goes that pro moving on through. He is, of course, checking for tech. He wants to see if a layer's coming. He wants to see if there's a Roach Warren, everything like that. He just wants kind of a better idea as to what is going on. And actually, look at that. Zergling scouts moving on across, trying to grab a proxy pylon. I wonder if they're going to catch it. I almost expect them to. Is he going to go up there into the base? Is he going to do it? Yes, he does. He moves right in there, catches that proxy pylon. So Grubby losing 100 resources and not gaining anything in return. That's quite unfortunate, I'd have to say. Take a look over here inside of Grubby's base. We do have 2 gateways coming on through. Anything else working on through at the moment? No, not quite as of yet. Does have that level 1 upgrade, so I'm going to think he's going to be getting a couple more gateways. A 6-gate push with that quick level 1 upgrade can be quite effective, but still right now he's just going to be sitting on those 3 gates, so we're just going to have to wait and see what he ends up deciding to do. Back over here, we can see, of course, that layer just about finished for Nerchio. Double extractors over there, double extractors over here, up and saturated already. So Nerchio going to be starting to pump out that Vespian. Still haven't really seen what his decision is going to be in terms of tech. Going to be interested to see if he decides to go for a Spire and try some Mutiling. You don't see that a lot anymore, especially against Protoss players. You used to see that pretty much all the time. That was the go-to build in almost all matchups. But right nowadays, you're pretty much seeing Roach, Hydra, and Corruptor. And then, of course, Infestors being incredibly powerful now, but Nerchio, no, going to be mixing it up and is, in fact, going to be going with that Spire. So going to start playing with some Mutas. Quite interesting there. What do we have over here? There's another gateway, and yeah, so just not a lot right now, in all honesty. Yeah, so it doesn't look like he's going to be going for that 6th gate, at least not initially. There's a Twilight Council, so probably going to be seeing some Blink Stalkers. With that level 1 upgrade, of course, those Blink Stalkers going to be very effective. There is that Overseer Scout, though, going to be catching that Twilight Council. That isn't an immediate indication as to exactly what Grubby's doing. He could actually, of course, be going up for Templar Tech, but that's a lot less likely than him just wanting to go for those quick Blink Stalkers, because, of course, those can be very effective. As you can see, level 1 upgrade just about finished right now. He's going to chill out with this Overseer here until later. He's going to bring that back in for another Scout at some point in the not-too-distant future, probably within the next 1 to 2 minutes. As we can see, Spire just about finished. Tons of Spine Crawlers here as this early game defense. He's, of course, going to need that. He's going to basically just trying to be doing some harassing with the early game Mutas. That's the entire point of that. And there, again, just about a minute later, that Overseer moving back in. He is going to be checking for that research, and he is going to see it. There we go. So Blink research coming on through. He's fully aware. There's a couple more gateways delaying it, though, with the contamination. Very nice play there by Nerchio. Going to be getting a couple of these Zerglings here. Free kills for Grubby. Here's a Proxy Pylon trying to keep up continuous aggression. He's going to be moving up to scout for a possible 3rd, but as we can see here, that is not in fact there. So no 3rd right now for Grubby to abuse and take advantage of, because he could have actually probably mopped that up pretty quickly with the forces he has right here. Here come the Mutas now, finally, though. We got 4 more in production, 7 on the board already, so going to be seeing a opening force of 11. There we go. I can do some basic math. I hope that's right for about it. Yes, I know that's right. I was just kidding. Anyways, Overseer, and there are those extra Mutas. So, yeah, this Muta harass could be quite frustrating. Going to be interested to see how effective Grubby is at dealing with this. Of course, Blink Stalker is going to do very well against Mutas, but that's not going to stop Nerchio from harassing and being a pain in the butt. There are those additional gateways. Turn those into warp gates right away. Forced to kill off the Pylon, though, to bring some Stalkers and those Sentries in here to actually deal with these Mutas. As we can see, that Blink research just about finished. Very nice harassment going down right now from Nerchio. He is stopping a lot of mining, and that's what you want to do. That is all you want to do. He is, of course, not looking for a KO right here. He's not expecting to take Grubby out, but he's just trying to be a pain in the butt, and he is trying to harass. That's the whole point. Getting up a couple cannons going to be quite effective against those Mutas. Not as effective as missile turrets would be. I don't know why I'm bringing that up, because there's no Terran in this game, but just saying, cannons aren't effective as missile turrets would be for a Terran player, but of course Terran, what am I talking about? Photon cannons still going to be pretty effective. See right now, moving out for that 3rd, and actually Nerchio moving it 1 spot above what you would expect as the natural 3rd. The main reason he's doing that is because Grubby's a lot more likely to check that before he checks that, and so if he has it up here, he could possibly be safer, but at the same time, it's going to be a lot harder to defend because it is a further distance to actually have to close. We can see going to start working up those Speedlings as well. He does have that melee attack level 1 upgrade coming on through, and that flyer attack level 1 upgrade just about finished as well, and here comes some continuous Muta harass, and with that Cloud, needs to be careful though. Blink Stalkers, again, very effective against those Mutas, so Nerchio is probably going to have to change up his game plan here, because he is going to have a hard time against those Blink Stalkers. That is definitely the case. They make harassing very difficult. The fact that they can close distances so very quickly, they'll just catch you by surprise, and they'll start to pick off a few Mutas here and there, and that can be very frustrating to deal with. We can see Psionic Storm coming out right now for Grubby, so of course moving in that Templar tech. Here are those Mutas, but watch this. They're going to walk right under those Blink Stalkers and losing one without doing anything at all, and that's the major concern. That's a big problem. Like I just mentioned, that the fact that they can close those gaps so very quickly is very threatening to those Mutalisks. Drones transferring on down right now. We do have one Zealot. Drone's going to catch wind of that, though, and finally going to have to pull back some units to deal with this. And actually, Grubby still may end up getting that scout. Let's see if he gets up there in time. It's pretty obvious either way because of the fact that those Zerglings are chasing down that Zealot. And there you go. Zealot moves on in. So right now, Grubby is aware of this third Expo. And that's going to leave basically a decision in his hand at this point in the game. Is he himself going to go for a third, or does he just want to push out with a strong 2 base? He's got those Blink Stalkers. He's starting to get in those High Templar right now as well. Start to save up those energy so they can get in some big storms once that big battle does eventually come. We have a ton more Zerglings coming out right now for Nerchio. Looks like Nerchio is going to try to continue up this harassment here as well. Big Muta Death Cloud. Let's take a quick look at the army tab. Nerchio at the lead right now. Let's take a look at how many mutas. 24 mutas, so that is a lot. Flyer attack level 2 upgrade coming on through. Like I mentioned earlier, though, you know, probably a couple months, not even a couple months ago, you saw many Zerg players just doing the Speedling Baneling Muta build. In almost all matchups, you could effectively do it. Obviously, some matchups better than others, but it was still effective and it still worked well in every single matchup. But you know, nowadays, again, as ZVP, as a Zerg player, all you're seeing pretty much is Roach, Hydra, Corruptor, and then obviously nowadays you're seeing Infestors come into play a lot more because they're so damn effective since that last patch. And here we go right now. Nerchio moving on down, trying to do some harassment again, pick off a couple of buildings. Needs to be careful again because of those Blink Stalkers. Forced to push back. He did get a pylon killed, and I don't think he ended up losing anything either, so I would say it's worth it. Why not? Taking some free kills there, and definitely not going to complain about that. We can see right now Nerchio is starting to saturate this third right now. Still trying to keep up this harassment, trying to be as much of a nuisance as possible. It looks like Grubby is gearing up to push out right now, and that's the perfect opportunity right now for these mutas to move in. And this is what can be most frustrating when it comes to dealing with mutas, and this is probably the main reason why the build was so effective in all the matchups, because it does a great job of containing your opponent no matter what race they are. It just does a phenomenal job of keeping them in their base. They're usually too scared to push out for fear of losing things. The thing to keep in mind, though, look at this, trying to expand. Lots of Zerglings moving down, though, to try to take it out. Did come across the forces, though, of Grubby that did force the Zerglings to push back. I just saw like a tidal wave of red take over and engulf that expansion, but as you can see, Grubby pulling down with his units was able to actually fend that off. We have a ton of Banelings coming on through right now, so we are pretty much seeing exactly what I mentioned earlier. This old style build, Speedling Baneling and Muta, could be very effective. We'll see how well he does. It's going to be very difficult with these High Templar on the board. Does need to be incredibly careful from those storms. You can see those High Templar pushing forward, getting ready to engage and trying to move down right now. Storms going down, though, doing tremendous amounts of damage. Muta's trying to move in. There are so many Blink Stalkers, though. Definitely has going to be forced to push back right now. Force fields stopping those Banelings from rolling in. That's one of the primary reasons that Nerchio decided to just pull on out of there. That and the fact that the storm did so much damage to his units, that was just a little too much for him to handle. He lost a lot there. Let's take a quick look at the units lost tab. 83 total units lost. You can see a resource advantage right now going to Grubby. He's taken out a lot more resources in terms of army size that out of Nerchio. Wow. I'm having a hard time speaking today, guys. Sorry, look at all these mutas so very low in HP. He needs to be very, very careful. If he comes across one storm, he could lose basically like a huge chunk of this. Probably could have used about half. Blink Stalker's pulling up because he is going to be catching these mutas right now inside of his base. Needs to be very careful not to lose too much. He's losing a lot of pylons right now. Nerchio does want to pull back now that those Blink Stalkers are moving forward. There you go. That is the proper move. That's exactly how you want to play this right here. Is trying to come up for a fourth right now as well. Gonna be interested to see if Grubby decides to try to go for his third. Well, I'm sorry, he does have his third. If he's gonna try to go for a fourth as well, or if he's just gonna push out. Blink Stalker's picking off a few of those mutas. Very nice there by Nerchio. A couple of Zerglings rolling on down. Looks like right now Nerchio is getting ready to push in. Lots of Speedlings, couple Banelings in the back, as well as those mutas. Oh, Storm just tearing through those Speedlings. Those Speedlings might as well have just not existed ever because they just disappeared. Look at those pools of blood. Those were some very nicely placed storms by Grubby. Very unfortunate. Nerchio is going to be forced to re-up his army right now, coming out with a ton more units. He's very low on resources, actually floating a ton of Espion right now. He's in a pretty vulnerable position at this point. If Grubby decided to push out, it could be a little too much for him to handle. So you can see right now Grubby at 173 as opposed to 137 of Nerchio. 112 of which is army supply and only 67 to Nerchio. So Nerchio definitely in a rough spot right now if Grubby decides to push out, and it looks like he is mounting up for attack right now. He does still have a few High Templar, some of them sitting with some energy as well, so we're going to see some additional storms here from Grubby. Nerchio, does not think he's got enough right now. He doesn't really have the techie units, and he does not have the overwhelming forces as well, just sacrificing Banelings, rolling on in. Mutas trying to move from behind, but Storm plus Blink Stalkers. See you later, Mutas. And yeah, Nerchio saying that Storm is win. GG. It is in fact the case. We saw some very nice Storms this game from Grubby, just decimating the forces of Nerchio. This game, we did see Grubby open up with a Forge Fast Expand into Blink Stalkers. You can see that Blink research coming through right now, and over here there's of course his quick expansion. Nerchio this game deciding to go for something that we used to see a lot of but not so much anymore, going for Spieling Baneling Muta. You can see that pretty early game Spire, using these Spine Crawlers as early defense as well as he tries to work up his Muta numbers. Nerchio moved out with his first batch of Mutas to do a little bit of harassment. He didn't end up doing too much damage though, simply because of the fact that Grubby did have a lot of anti-air. He was able to fly around for a little while, but as soon as the Stalkers and Sentry made it back home, you can see right now destroying off his own pylon to get back in there. Grubby was able to handle it after that point, but Nerchio did do some decent amount of early game harass. Nerchio's Muta harass was pretty much rendered ineffective though once Grubby's Blink research did end up finishing. Our first big engagement came as Grubby moved out to his third expansion. You can see Nerchio moving out with those Spielings, Banelings, and Mutas. However, with some really nice play Storms and Force Field, Nerchio's attack was pretty much rendered ineffective. Nerchio tried to move out a second time, was met again with some really nice plays Force Fields and Storms. And then finally, Grubby moved out for his final big push and yet again showed us the power of Storms against light units such as Spielings, Banelings, and Mutas. Just completely tearing through the units. That, in conjunction with those Blink Stalkers, was way too much for Nerchio to handle. So there you go, guys. Grubby did end up winning this best of 3 series 2-0 against Nerchio. As always, if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Keep watching and keep owning.